What's up, Steelers fans? I am back with another video. I had this to think about after Tomlin's press conference, and I need your honest opinion. Does Mike Tomlin want to make peace in the locker room, or does he just want to move on from the locker room drama? Steelers versus Bengals is Saturday at 8 p.m. over at Acrisure Stadium, and it's not a playoff game, but it's probably going to feel like a playoff game. It should feel like that to the Steelers because they need to win a game before the actual playoff. Some of the players talked about this, understanding and respecting that you can't just lose 4 in a row. You can't nosedive and then all of a sudden you just pick up the front of the plane right before you're about to have impact and take off. That's not how it works. These guys have to get, I believe, not only the result, they also have to get a pretty good showing against what's become a pretty decent team, and almost a playoff team themselves in the Bengals. But it's not going to happen without addressing, I don't even know if it's an elephant in the room, or if it's a herd of elephants at this point, the way the defensive guys have been talking. And there have been a lot of clues from the players to the effect that it's one guy who is not trying. This is not just the cliche, if you have one guy out of position and the other 10 are doing their jobs, not just that, but it's been real suggestions that it's one guy. Whatever the case may be, whoever the culprit might be, Tomlin has to get this under control, and to that end, he and the players had a meeting. Things were by all accounts aired out. Everybody had their say who wanted to have their say, and the results seemed to be a pretty big positive. Here's what I know from watching this team and following this team. Tomlin's not the type to make changes in such settings. He'd much rather find a way to just forge ahead. That's always been who he is. Whether it's something like this, whether it's a strategic thing, whether it's personnel usage, whether it's clock management, whatever it is. This is what he had to say about the locker room defensive drama.
When you met last Thursday, did you address some of the kind of bickering that was going on among the defense about each other, and did you quell that kind of?
You know, I didn't do much about it, man. They bicker because they care, and we weren't playing well. And oftentimes, the solutions is born out of conflict and confrontation, particularly when you're in the business that we're in. And so we're not going to let an issue like that be a big issue. It's really not. Guys expressing truth and working to seek solutions, and sometimes emotions are involved in that. And so most of the time when you get out of those circumstances, you're able to move on as a collective, and I feel like we certainly have done that.
From his press conference, I picked on 2 things. He said his players were bickering, which was born from losing games. To use the word bickering to describe his defensive players is downright arrogant, because he doesn't think there needs to be any changes just to stop the bickering. No one outside the players and staff was in the meeting to know what was said. One thing is for sure, he knows who this one guy is. It pops up in the film. However, Tomlin and even the Rooneys hold this guy in high regard. They even took a chance at him during his suspension. If Tomlin succeeded in quelling his bickering, or whatever anybody would want to call it, then things should be okay except for one variable here. What if the players were right about this player who isn't performing well, and who isn't trying his hardest? And nobody ever knows this better than the players themselves. What if the players were right to want this person off the field? What if the players were right that their defense could be that much more if that individual were replaced by somebody else? Let's say, for example, Cam Sutton were to be replaced by Beanie Bishop, hypothetically. The issue I've seen with Tomlin is a need to be right, and he will stick with someone, sink with the ship so to speak, just to prove a point. Not that it has not worked before. To his credit, he stuck with Russell Wilson and made the change when he was available and completely changed what this offense could be. But if Tomlin favors somebody that he's known for a long time and shows everybody that he wasn't wrong to bring him back, it is undermining his players and a very dangerous game if they end up losing on Sunday and the same busted coverage happens. From my understanding, Tomlin didn't do much repairing. I think he kind of let the players handle that from the sound of it, from the way that he spoke about it. But some change needed to happen, and the fact that they came in the day after Christmas and addressed a lot of these issues on the field or issues off the field. Hearing what players said after the game, the things that we saw on the field, guys blowing assignments, miscommunication here and there. It's just all that needed to be addressed, and they didn't waste any time. They immediately went in the lab, as Mike Tomlin likes to say, and got to work on that, and then took 3 days. After that mini-bye, the overall mood is a lot more positive than the last time we saw these guys. Mike Tomlin said in his press conference, "We're a motivated group, and I'm not getting the sense that they're going to rest guys if the Ravens happen to win before they take the field on Saturday." He said he wants to get the stench off of this 3-game losing streak and all that work they are putting in, and all the meetings that they're going through right now. That's all in preparation to play the best football they possibly can Saturday night and go into the playoffs on a high note. I liked hearing from the players that they can't go into the playoffs losing 4 in a row. I believe strongly that there's no other way you can manufacture momentum. They can't just say, well, we were going to beat the Bengals, we were going to take care of business, but then the Ravens won and took the division. Therefore we thought it was a good idea to rest guys. We will win in the playoff though. No, that's not how it works. They need real and performance-based, right in front of you, tangible results that you can hold on to, that you can take into this playoff matchup, wherever that happens to be.
When I heard Steelers player locker rooms conference, you can feel with these guys that they have to beat the Bengals. Not that they want to, not that it would be nice, but that they have to. They were not talking about the division win, they were not talking about anything else, but just have to win this game. The need to win, it's the only way that they can solve these issues, is by winning. That's the only thing they can control when it comes to getting into the playoffs. Like, they've already gotten into the playoffs, which is great, but the only thing that they could control going forward is them winning football games. They can't control whether the Ravens beat the Browns or not, and they possibly win the division or not. They can't control whether the Chargers lose to the Raiders and guarantee themselves the 5th seed if they don't win the division. They are worried about one thing and one thing only. That's beating Joe Burrow and the Bengals on Saturday night, and that's the right mindset to have. As for me, what I'd like to see from this team is winning this football game. They also need to perform well. They need to actually play well. So if you're the Steelers and you go out there and you face the player who I feel is the league's MVP in Joe Burrow, I know I'm in the minority on that. I don't care. He's got a good case for it. If he didn't before, he sure does now. And if he were to somehow get the Bengals in the playoffs, then I think it's case closed. But if you're to go out there and you play well against Burrow, now that's a relative thing. You're not going to shut him down. You're not going to shut down Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But what you can do is maybe just have a good showing against him. Keep them modest. And from there, that plus a win, now you go into, let's say, Houston, and C.J. Stroud doesn't look all that scary, does he? Because he's not Joe Burrow. For that matter, he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not the quarterbacks that you face in your division, 2 of which are the best in football. So, I just feel like there's something more to be gained than just chalking up the actual dub. You also have to show that you've gotten better at some things, and that you've shaken off what Mike Tomlin called the stench of those 3 games. It will be a much-deserved dub against a team that's fighting for their playoff lives. This is a team that has crawled back from 4-8. Their defense has taken the ball away more than anybody else in football since the Steelers last beat them, and that's a good opponent to test where you are, to test the change. We can talk about getting things right, but you gotta do this against one of the best teams in football right now. In terms of the way teams are playing, the Bengals are up there right now. With the way that they're playing, that's true. Yeah, and to have that even be the case for what had to be the worst defense we've seen all season, I mean in terms of just not being able to tackle or just simple basics, fundamentals. Let's not pretend that the Bengals defense is all of a sudden great, but let's also not pretend that getting up for the Bengals is going to be an issue. And on top of everything else that we're laying out here, they're in the division, and they're the Bengals. Thanks for listening. I appreciate every one of you. I wish you a happy, safe, and prosperous new year. I will be back Thursday to discuss keys to victory against the Bengals. Be safe and take care until we meet again.